Today I am here with another chapter, and the name of this chapter is the leaf. So if we talk about leaf, we know that it is a part of the plant, and similarly like leaves, there are a lot more other parts of the plants which are its root, the stems, they have the branches, and also flowers and fruits. Now all these different organs, they perform different functions in the plant, and today we will be discussing about one of those parts, and that is the leaf. So we will basically see what is a leaf, we will talk about its structure, we'll be talking about its type, its functions, and a lot more. So let's go to the chapter and let's see first. Now, when I talk of leaf, something like this kind of an image might come into your mind. Alright, so a leaf is maybe something like this kind of a picture. So you can basically define leaf as that thin, green, broad and flat part of the plant which is attached with the help of a stalk. To the stem or to a shoot. Now this leaf, it has many different parts and we are going to talk about that also. So let's just look at them one by one. If you see this entire structure here, this part, this entire flat thing here, which is broad and green in color, now this part can be called the lamina or the leaf blade. Next, you will see that this leaf blade is attached to the shoot or the stem with the help of a small stalk here. This stalk is called the petiole. Next, just from the petiole here, you can see another structure like this which runs through the middle of the leaf. This kind of a structure, you can see that it is more or less like a vein. It is a thick vein and it runs through the middle of the leaf. Now this vein, because it is running from the middle, it is known as the midvein, or you can also call it the midrib. Then from these midribs again, you can see many more branches arising. You can see small branches like this which further divide, and this keeps on going. So these little branches which is arising from the main vein or the mid vein here, these are simply known as veins. Now the function of this mid vein and the small vein is to give support and structure to the leaf, and also it helps in the transportation of food and water in this leaf. Now when you just see a leaf, you can see these things, but there are a lot of things which you cannot see with your naked eyes. For example, if you take this leaf and if you just see it under a microscope, a small part, if you see it under a microscope, you can see cells like these. Okay, and in the middle you can see there is a small pore. Now this pore is known as stomata. The reason why this pore is present is that it is required for the exchange of gases inside the leaf and from the air or in the atmosphere. Alright. And one more thing, this pore is required because when plants they take in excess water, the water also exits through this pore which is known as the stomata. And another significant thing, if you observe, is that we generally find that leaves, they are green in color. But why are they green? This is because of the presence of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a pigment, okay? It is a green color pigment. And because this pigment is green in color, that is why the leaves are also green in color. Alright, so in every leaf you can see all these things. So this is basically the basic structure and parts of a leaf. Now let us just look at kinds of leaves, because we see all leaves are not same and they differ. So let's just look at the kinds of leaf next. Now if I show you a leaf like this, there is the midvein here. And you can see other veins here also. Anyway, this kind of a leaf where the stalk, it has just one leaf there, this kind of a leaf is known as a simple leaf. This is a simple leaf. Example is, you can see this in mango. You can see that mango leaves are like that only, means the stalk or the petiole, it has just one leaf. Now, if you see in some other plants like hibiscus, that is the China rose, you will see that, see here, this leaf, it is entire, okay, it is full in both the sides. Now, if you see in the case of China rose, you will see that there are little bit of, you can say, cuts or striations. You can see like this, right? There are cuts there. That means this thing which was full, it has been cut, okay? And as a result, the leaf becomes like this. So there are cuts in the leaf, okay? This is also a simple leaf because you can see that the petiole has only one leaf. You can see this kind of leaf in the case of China rose. So simple leaf is the first kind of leaf. Now we have another leaf which is known as the compound leaf. Type 2 is compound leaf. Now what do you mean by compound leaf? The word compound itself, it means more than one. So in this case, what happens is that when these cuts that we have, it goes very deep, that it goes that deep that it comes to the midrib here. See, this will go to the midrib here. Okay, the cuts, they start going to the midrib. Then what will happen? This entire leaf, it appears to become in small parts. The cuts here, it will go deep up to the midvein, alright. So you can see that it can become like this. That means the leaf is being divided into smaller parts, and these smaller parts also, they start appearing like leaves, okay. But this is not the leaf. These smaller parts in which the entire leaf is being divided is known as leaflet. Okay, it is known as leaflet. And then you can see that there are many leaflets like this. You can see that there are many leaflets like this. Sometimes we confuse them to be a leaf, but it is not. These are the leaflets, and this entire structure which is having many leaflets, this entire structure is a leaf. What kind of leaf? It is a compound leaf. So it is clear that a compound leaf is a kind of leaf which has many leaflets which appear to be like small leaves. Alright. Now example of compound leaf, you can see this kind of leaf in neem plants. You can also see them in rose. I will just show you an image here. See, this is a simple leaf to the stalk, just one leaf is attached. This is a simple leaf. And in case of compound leaf, see the stalk here, many leaves are there. Actually, these are the leaflets, and this entire thing is a leaf. Okay, so this is a compound leaf. Now the next topic is venation. If you observe leaves carefully, you will see that these midvein and the other veins are arranged in a particular way in a leaf. So that pattern is actually known as venation. That means venation is the arrangement of the veins in the leaf. Now the arrangement, it can be basically of two types. Let us see what are they. The first one is reticulate venation and the second one is parallel venation. Now the word reticulate, it means like net-like, okay, net. So if you see the veins here, the mid veins, if you see the veins, the side at the side, you will see that the veins are spreading in such a way that it is forming a net-like structure. So that is why this is known as the reticulate venation. You can see this type of venation in a mango leaf. If you just see a mango leaf, you'll be able to see this type of branched kind of venation. The next one is parallel venation. From the word parallel, we know what are parallel lines, lines like this, right, which do not meet and they are parallel to each other. So from parallel venation, it means that you see the midrib here and see the veins at the side. All the veins, they run parallel to each other. So from that name, we get parallel venation. An example of this can be banana. If you see the leaves of banana, you will see that all the veins, they run parallel to each other. Now, the next thing, we are all studying about leaves, right? But why do we have to know about leaves? What is its importance or what are its functions? So, we'll just see the functions of the leaves next. So, function of the leaf. Function of the leaf. Now, a leaf basically has three very important functions. The first function is to make food for the entire plant. The second one is transpiration and the third one is respiration. So there are three main functions. Now let's just see them one by one. The first one is photosynthesis. Now leaves, they are basically known as the food factory. They are known as the food factory. Why so? Because the leaves are the part which makes food for the entire plant. And it makes the food by a process called photosynthesis. Now, what do you understand by the word photosynthesis? The word photo, it means light. And the word synthesis, this means making, okay? So it is basically the process in which green leaves, they make food in the presence of light. But how does this basically occur? Now see, for making food, what is required is, we need carbon dioxide, CO2. Carbon dioxide we need, and we need water. And in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, that is the green pigment which is present in the leaf, we get oxygen, that is O2. Sorry, the first thing we get is food. And oxygen, that is O2. Now, from where does a plant get carbon dioxide? We know that there are plenty of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, so it gets carbon dioxide from the air. Okay. Next, water. The plant, it gets water from the soil. The roots absorb the water and then it transfers it to the leaves. And then in the presence of sunlight, what the chlorophyll does is that it traps the energy from the sunlight, and this energy is required to make food, and the plant in this process, it also releases oxygen. That is why we say that we need to plant more trees so that we get oxygen. So this is the process of photosynthesis, and if you want to, the process can be defined as, it is the process by which green plants use sunlight to make food from carbon dioxide and water. Alright. So this was the first thing, photosynthesis, the first function. Now, the second function is transpiration. Second function is transpiration. Now, in a plant, we have roots, we have stems, or we have branches. From this you can see the leaves are there. What happens is that there is water in the soil, okay? There is water in the soil. So what the root does is that it keeps on absorbing water. And after absorbing water, it sends it to the leaf so that it can use it for making food. Now, what happens is that the root sometimes, it takes in excess of water, and that much of water is not required for the process of photosynthesis. So what happens, that extra water has to be lost. So how is that lost? Okay, if you remember, I said that there are tiny pores in the leaves which are known as the stomata. What happens is that the extra water which is taken up by the plant is lost in the air in the form of water vapor through these openings called the stomata. And this entire process of losing the excess water through the stomata in the form of water vapor is known as transpiration. Okay. And the third function was respiration. Now this is actually a complicated thing, and just know that in respiration you basically derive energy, which is you basically derive energy from the food. All right, and further means you learn this in more detail in a higher classes. And there is one more thing: the food that the plant which it was making by the process of photosynthesis is that it makes the food in the form of glucose. This is a simple type of sugar. This is a simple type of sugar, okay? And when the plant makes excess glucose, it stores some of them in the form of starch. Starch is also a type of sugar, but this is a complex type of sugar. So these were the functions of the leaf. The next is arrangement of leaves on the stem. The next topic is arrangement of leaves on the stem. Now, many of you might not have observed this, but after learning this, if you see trees or if you see plants, you can see that the leaves are actually arranged on the stem, okay, but their arrangement is not the same. All the leaves, they are not arranged in the same way. All right, so let's see what are the different types of arrangement. First, know that this arrangement of the leaf on the stem, this is known as phyllotaxy. So phyllotaxy, it is the arrangement of the leaves on the stem. In one word, we call it phyllotaxy. Now there are three types of phyllotaxy. Let's see what are they. The first one is alternate phyllotaxy. The second one is opposite phyllotaxy. And the third one is whorl phyllotaxy. Now what happens here is that you see there is a stem, okay, and what do you see? You see that the leaves are there. Now the leaves, they are coming out from a point which is known as the nod, right? This point from which the leaf is coming out is known as the nod. So in alternate phyllotaxy, what you see is that from one nod, only one leaf comes out, and you see that the leaf here, this is on the, you can see it's on the left side, and the leaf on the next node comes out from the right side. The next one again left, the next one again right. So you see that the leaves are in an alternate position. So that is why this arrangement of the leaves on the stem is known as alternate phyllotaxy. Okay, this one you can see an example. This one you can see in China rose. You can see in China rose or hibiscus. Okay. The next one is opposite phyllotaxy. Same again. We see a stem here. And we see that the leaves, they originate from the node region. Now see, in this one we saw that from the node only one leaf came out at a time, alright. But in the case of opposite phyllotaxy, you will observe that from a single node you can see two leaves or a single pair of leaf, alright. And see, both the leaves, they are arranged like this. That means they are opposite to each other. See here, in this node also, they are opposite to each other. In the next node also, they are opposite to each other. So this kind of arrangement of the leaves on the stem is known as opposite phyllotaxy. And you can see this in guava. You can observe guava and you will see this kind of arrangement. The next one is whorl phyllotaxy. Whorl means something like round, okay. So what happens here is that there is a stem here. In this case, you will see that more than, this is a node. in this case you will see that from a knot, more than 2 leaves, they come out from a single knot, alright. And you see that the leaves are arranged in such a way that you will see that maybe it is, forming a kind of circle. See, it is more or less forming a kind of circle. So this is known as the whorled phyllotaxy, and you can see this in oleander. You can see this in oleander. So this was about the phyllotaxy. Next is modification of leaves. Next, we are going to see modification of leaves. Now, just earlier, we just studied about the functions of a leaf. We said it is used for making food by the process of photosynthesis, used for transpiration. But apart from these functions, when a leaf has to perform some additional functions, then the leaves are modified. The word modified means there is a basic change maybe in structure or function. Okay, so how are the leaves modified? Now, if you take an example of a wild pea, we often see that leaves are there. Plus, what happens is that you can see some thread-like structures which are coiled like this. Thread-like structures, and you can see that it is very thin and green in color and it is coiled. Okay, what are these? These are also leaf, but they are modified in a way that it forms a thin coil-like structure. Now, this modification is known as the tendril. So the first modification of a leaf is the tendril leaf, alright, or leaf tendrils. Leaf tendrils. If you see wild peas, you see where these kind of structures are present, you will see that the stem is not strong enough. It cannot just stand. So it needs what? It needs support. If there is a, if you place a stick like this here, it will coil around a stick. Okay. And why is this leaf modified here? Because the stems, they are very weak. The stems are weak and it cannot take the load of the entire plant. That is why the leaves are modified to form these kind of tendrils and it takes support. Okay, you can see this in the case of wild peas. Now, the second modification is leaf spines. Leaf spines. I think we all know what a cactus is. We know that it is a desert plant. You can see something like this and you see small spikes are there present, right? Now, are there leaves present in a cactus? You might say no, but actually leaves are present there. These spines that you see, these are actually the leaves. What leaf? They are the spine leaf. What happens is that we know that a cactus is a desert plant, and in desert we know that there is lack of water. Okay, so and leaves have what? They have stomata through which the water keeps on going. All right, it evaporates. So in order to reduce that water loss, the leaves are modified to become small spines, because see, a big leaf like this will have lots of stomata, alright, and a small spine like this, obviously less area, so it will have less stomata. Alright, so that is why it is modified, so that there is less loss of water. And one more thing is that it also helps in defense. That is, because the spines are present here, the grazing animals will stay away. So it is also defensive in nature. Now we have a third type of modification that is known as the scale leaves. There is a third modification, it is known as the scale leaves. What happens here is that in some plants you will see that the leaves have been modified into scale leaves. Okay, and example here is onion. That fleshy thing in the onion that we are eating, that is nothing but it is the scale leaf, alright, and its function is that it protects the bud. So this was all about the modification of leaves which we generally see. Now there are some more modifications. One very interesting modification of the leaf is that it forms sometimes what happens, it gets modified and it forms a different kind of plant. What kind of plant? It forms insectivorous. It forms insectivorous plants. Now, what do we mean by insectivorous plants? These are the plants which eat insects. Okay. Now we know that plants, they are green and they can manufacture their own food. So why do they have to behave like animals? Like we depend on others for our food. So why do plants also have to depend on insects or other small organisms for their food? The answer is that some plants, they grow in damp areas where there is very less nitrogen. There is lots of water, but then the soil, it's very poor in nitrogen. So in order to get this nitrogen, they have to feed on insects. So they do photosynthesis also, plus they feed on insects also to get nitrogen. Example of this is pitcher plant. Pitcher plant. Then there is another example, that's bladderwort. And another example is the Venus flytrap. The first example here is the pitcher plant. Now if you see this plant, here the leaf has been modified into a hollow tube-like structure. And this is the top part of the leaf which has been modified into a lid. Now what happens here is that there are hairs present inside this hollow structure. Whenever an insect comes, it gets entangled here in the hair and it slips down. Once the insect is dead, then the walls of this hollow tube, it starts releasing digestive enzymes, and then the insect is digested. So here you can see how the leaf has been modified. Next example is the bladderwort. If you see here, there is a sac-like structure here. So what happens is that the organisms, they get inside here, the small insects, and in a similar way, they get entrapped here, and then the digestive juices later digest them. The third example is the Venus flytrap. In this case, if you see, now when we see a leaf here like this, we know that there is a midvein here. What happens in this plant is that this midvein, this plant, it gets folded from the middle. Suppose here we have the middle here, it gets folded in this way. So what happens when an insect comes here, it has hairs like this, stiff hairs at its margin. When an insect comes here, the leaf, it quickly closes, all right, and then it does not allow the insect to get out of here. And finally what happens is that the insect dies and the digestive juices are secreted out. As a result, it dies and the plant, it gets the nitrogen from these organisms. Now the next topic is vegetative propagation. First we have to know what vegetative propagation is. We know that new plants come into existence from old plants, we know that, but how? It happens through the flower, right? We know that flower is the reproductive part of a plant. So new plants basically comes from this flowers through pollen grains, and then seeds are formed, right? But all this is this is known as the sexual reproduction in plants. Alright, this is known as the sexual reproduction. But plants do not always reproduce sexually. There is another method which is known as asexual reproduction. In this, the plant does not involve the sexual organ, that is the asexual part, that is the flower. Okay. So what happens here? This vegetative propagation, it is actually also known as asexual reproduction. What happens here is that new plants here are produced from the vegetative parts. That means not from the flower, but from the vegetative parts, that is the stem, the root, it can be leaf of the existing plant. An example can be potato, ginger. If you have ever observed potatoes, you see if we keep them for a long period, you see some whitish kind of thing which appears on the potato. That is known as the eye of the potato, or that is also the bud. Okay. If you cut this portion of the potato with the bud, and if you put it in the soil and water it, you will see that a new potato plant, it can come from this bud. Okay. So here there is no flowers involved, and this happens here. Okay, so this is a method of vegetative propagation. It also occurs in it can also occur through the stem, like in the case of rose. Alright, now because we are talking about leaves in this chapter, we will see about vegetative propagation by leaves. Okay, vegetative propagation by leaves. That means here the new plant, it comes into existence from the leaf of the existing plant. An example here is a bryophyllum. What happens here, if you see the leaf, it has these kinds of, okay, its margin is like this, wavy type, and here you can see buds are there. Small buds you can see on the margins, alright. What happens is that when you detach these buds and if you plant them, you can see that new plants can grow from each of these buds, alright. So we see this in the case of bryophyllum. We can see this is a bryophyllum plant. See here at the margin we can see the buds are present. If we take out these buds and plant them, from each of these buds a new plant can arise. So this is vegetative propagation by leaf. Now there is another plant which is called begonia. From there also you can see this type of vegetative reproduction. Now this is all for this chapter, and let us just move to the objective type questions. Here we have choose the correct answer. The first one is C. 2C, 3A, 4C, 5B, 6B, 7A, 8D, 9C, 10B. Next, fill in the blanks. The first one is petiole, second one is stomata, third is simple, fourth is veins, 5 is chlorophyll, 6 is phyllotaxy. Next, true and false. True, true, false, true, true, false. Here we have named the following. First one is bamboo, banana, mango, guava, oleander, Indian cucumber, pitcher plant, Venus flytrap, bryophyllum, begonia. See, I have underlined here because these are scientific names. Next, we have the subjective type questions. There are 6 questions here. The answers are given on the page. The part of the plant which produces food are leaves. The process by which leaves lose water into the air is transpiration. 2 plants with leaves modified into spines are cactus and prickly poppy. China rose plant has alternate phyllotaxy. The function of the leaf tendril is to give support to the weak stems. Vegetative propagation is a method where production of new plants take place through the vegetative parts, stem, roots or leaves of the existing plants.